Hello and welcome. This is JDeg, and I hope you enjoyed the last video of Shaman. And I figured that we would move on to Death Knight for the Perils in Paradise expansion. So Death Knight is going to be sharing with, well, it's going to be taking cards from Shaman. Um, and I'm not really into the Death Knight set, or at least its synergies with the Shaman set. It doesn't really make too much sense. But without further ado, let's just kind of go ahead. We got the spell school package. So, like I said, here's our shaman stuff. We have to run buttons, a 5 cost 5/5 that draws a spell of each spell school. And he's runeless, which is nice. But you know, you look at these cards, you look at all these spell school cards, and they're really nice in shaman. And then you realize that there's not really any spell schools in Death Knight. So I didn't really include it in this PowerPoint, but for Shadow, you don't have like you have a couple, maybe like 8 spells, but none of them are really good. I think the best you have is like Asphyxiate. You have like the Plague Decay spell that was down with the ship, I think. There's just nothing really good. Um, and then you have a bunch of Frost spells at least, but then you're kind of stuck playing Frost Decay. Because if you don't play Frost Decay, like if you play Rainbow Decay or Unholy or Blood, then you don't really have any good Frost spells then. And that's literally the only 2 spell schools that Death Knight has. So then you're stuck with the Shaman cards, and you think, okay, so they must have given Shaman some like good spell school cards that can like kind of fit into Death Knight for the missing ones, like maybe an Arcane, a Fire, a Nature, a Holy, Fell. And so you look at that, and then there's nothing. We have Malted Magma, which is the 2 cost drink spell that deals 1 damage to enemies, and you can use it 3 times. Which is okay, but like there's not really any synergy with what Death Knight does. Death Knight doesn't have any like spell synergy right now, or spell damage or anything. And that's the only fire spell. The only nature spell is this, if I go for it, this natural talent. Get a random Naga and random spell that costs 1 less for 3 mana. That card is terrible. It doesn't fit with any archetypes that we have. So none of this really makes sense. Siren Song, get 2 random spells from spell schools you haven't cast this game. Why am I doing that? And like Carrot. So Karis, obviously you have your shadow spells that you don't really want to run, but the shadow is the best option off of Karis. But then what's the other spell school that you're going to reliably get to proc your Karis and get it set up and not just have it be a dead card in hand while you wait? Are you going to play Frost? The Frost like options suck. I don't want to freeze 3 minions after destroying. So then you lose value there. And like what the one fire spell that I can't guarantee having, and I don't even really want to run. I don't see it. Razzle Dazzler, like once again, not enough spell schools to really do anything with it. Cabaret Headliner, as great a card of it as it is, there's just I'm gonna discard 2 cards that I don't even want to discount that much. And I can't guarantee, Death Knight doesn't even have draw um, beforehand, so I can't even like tempo this Cabaret Headliner on 4 that often to get at least 2 discounts, right? So it's just none of it makes sense to me with the spell damage stuff or the spell school stuff. Maybe in the future, Death Knight has some kind of dual class thing where it gets different spell schools or the mini set. But for now, I don't see how any of these cards make any sense, and it sucks because the Shaman Tourist, this card would be absolutely insane in like Mage or Shaman, but you can't even play it in Shaman. You can only play it in Death Knight, and like it looked like when we first got it revealed, oh man, it's gonna draw like 5 cards all the time. It's gonna be awesome, and it's gonna set up my Cabaret Headliner. No, it's gonna draw like 2 cards, maybe. Like if 3 cards, if you're lucky, you didn't draw cards in the wrong order and you played some bad cards in your deck. I don't get it. It sucks. But now we have the more promising stuff. We have this kind of corpse, slow burn, control-y, tradey kind of thing. So Corpse Coal is probably the most interesting deck building wise card. It's deal 3 damage. Spend 3 corpses to return this to your hand at the end of your turn. It's a frost spell. Yippee. And so this one really reminds me of Frozen Touch from Murder at Castle Nathria. That was the mage card that mage ended up using quite a bit as just kind of like a slow burn tool. You know, you would infuse it basically every turn, deal 3 damage basically every turn. And so this is kind of better, but kind of worse. So like you can't use it twice in a row is the biggest downside, I should say. Compared to Frozen Touch, you know, you could deal 6 damage to face by using the infused one and then the non-infused one on the last turn. Corpsicle, you're limited to once a turn, which kind of sucks. But what we did get in the mini set, as you can see, kind of in the back of that Corpsicle, is Foam Render. That's the five cost 5/1 weapon that gets durability if you spend 3 corpses every single time that you swing in, kind of similar to Corpsicle. So what we have here is some kind of deck where you're trying to get at least like 6 corpses a turn, and then you're dealing 8 damage burn every turn. So and that's if you're willing to put in that investment of the 5 mana foam render and then 2 mana each turn on Corpsicle. That's up to you, but it does sound like some inevitability if you're able to build up those corpses. So it sounds interesting. It's at least something deck build for compared to the spell school stuff. Moving on, we have Horizon's Edge, which sounded really promising at first. It's a 4 cost location with 5 durability that deals 3 damage. It casts an arcane missile. And then after a friendly minion dies, you reopen it. So you're hoping to have a whole bunch of tokens and trade in. I don't like that I'm trading in, first off. It's very slow to start with if I don't have minions. And then the location hits their minions and then what? And then I have to wait for it to reopen again. I don't know. You know, I'm saying it now and maybe it's a 3 star. On second thought, I might be underselling it now that I'm saying it out loud, but at the same time, it sounds clunky, it sounds expensive, and it doesn't generate corpses when I want to be generating corpses. So, it's slow. I don't like slow cards in Death Knight, and this is a slow card. So, Frosty Decor, really powerful card for Shaman. That's the basically a cold case upgraded plus for 5 mana. And seems like a shoe-in for any kind of control Death Knight that wants to slow the game down. Especially kind of setting up maybe a Reska turn, some kind of stally turn, right? So, seems like a really good stall tool for your burn game plan. And seems like a nice shoe-in if there's this kind of slower Death Knight, which there already kind of is, but I'm not sure if this slow Death Knight is going to carry over into the new expansion, at least for the first few patches, right? And then Malted Magma, like I said, it's decent. It's a fire spell if you want to run buttons and some shaman cards like Frosty Decor. Um, yeah, because Frosty Decor is really the only reason that you want to play shaman cards and buttons. It's like the only good card. But it's there. It's something. If we get spell damage, it's great with spell damage. So I give it 2 stars. And then here's the more promising direction. We have the token Death Rattle, kind of playing in with this corpsicle idea of summoning a whole bunch of minions. So first off, we have Brittlebone Buccaneer, which is 2 cost 1/4. Whenever you play a Death Rattle minion, give it Reborn. I give it 3 stars because it's pretty sticky on turn 2 if you can tempo it, and then you have a bunch of well, a decent amount. I would have given it 4 or 5 stars if I saw more Death Rattles. But really, what we have right now is we have Eliza Goreblade and Reska as the high rolls, and then the on curve options. You have Harbinger of Frost, the 2 cost 3/2 Death Rattle, draw a Frost spell. We have Dreadhound Handler, and we have Chill Fallen Baron and Miracle Salesman. So some decent cards that can kind of curve into it. I would love if there was something else. But that's all we have for now. And it's something definitely to look forward to in the future in case there's any other Death Rattle kind of tempo cards printed. And if there's something that you can buff the attack of, then it's really great. Ghoul's Knight, 4 cost unholy spell that summons 5/1/1 ghouls that attack random enemies. So this one's difficult because it's a huge corpse generation. Um, And so you can kind of compare it to crop rotation. Crop rotation summons four that die at the end of the turn, and they have rush, but you can kind of choose where they go. Um, and so this is more expensive. It's you don't know where the attacks go. It's way better on an empty board, but you can't really guarantee an empty board on turn four nowadays, or ever, really. And so it's kind of mediocre. I'm only giving it 2 stars because we have that Acolyte of Death synergy. And maybe it's really good with Eliza Goreblade. If you can get a semi-empty board, you can deal 10 damage face. Um, and I'll talk about Eliza Goreblade in a bit. But first, we have Dreadhound Handler, the 2-cost 2/2 undead pirate with Rush. And Death Rattle summon a 1/1 Dreadhound with Reborn. So it just summons a Mermy, basically, if you want to think of it like that. Just a kind of mediocre one drop. It seems like a really powerful card. It's a bunch of stats. It's a bunch of sticky stats. That can really help out with your synergies and kind of guaranteeing that you have a minion on board within those first few turns, generating corpses and things like that. So it seems like a nice shoe in for almost any DK deck that wants to be on board. And then Eliza Goreblade, 4-cost 4/3. Lucky us, it is a Frost and Blood rune. Isn't that just lovely? Oh, and the left two cards are Unholy Runes. It's like they were just asking us to do Rainbow DK once again. Lovely. I love runes. And so Eliza Goreblade says Death Rattle for the rest of the game. Your minions have +1 attack. So we're kind of shoehorned into playing a Rainbow DK deck, which kind of sucks. But it does seem like a really powerful effect, especially if you can give it Reborn or recast that Death Rattle. It sounds pretty funny. But this gives you some inevitability. It really upgrades your hero power by a lot. And you can upgrade all your token summoners as well. Just imagine a crop rotation, being able to clear away more, Ghouls Knight being able to deal damage face. And so it really plays into this kind of slow, kind of tokeny burn deck with Corpsicle. That's really interesting. And so I think that there's potential here, but it does seem a little slow. And for that reason, I'm not too high on them. I give them kind of in a range of 3 to 2. Well, I guess on an average 3 stars. I don't think this is going to be a good deck to start with the expansion, but maybe after a couple nerfs or something, maybe there's some kind of niche that we have here. Um, but next we have Freeze, the little Freeze support package that got printed for Death Knight, as well as a single card in Shaman that kind of plays with it. There's Slippery Slope. It's a 2 Frost Rune card, so get any idea of Rainbow out of their mind. It's basically only ever going to be what two Frost, 1 Unholy if you want to run Reska, or 3 Frost. And so it's this freeze a character, draw a card for each frozen character for 2 mana. And so this is actually really interesting. I love cards that do a little effect and draw as an upside. I think we've seen like Chaos Strike being really good. As just a little effect plus a draw that makes the card way like more valuable, especially on kind of a situational card. You can just toss this out on two if you want to draw. Later on in the game, if you want to hold it and deny an attack while drawing, it's great. And you can combo it with something like Frostburn's Fury, with something like Might of Menethil, like a Glacial Shard, and like on the right Meltamental. That it seems really good that you have all this upside that you can combo it with as well. So I think this card is really good. I don't think that there is a Frost Death Knight deck yet. I think that they're still missing some pieces, but Slippery Slope is a really powerful card that I would watch out for. So to go with that, we have Snow Shredder. That's a 4-cost 4/4 that costs 1 if a character is frozen. Seems like a nice shoe-in. It is kind of a small body at 4/4. We're used to these kinds of effects being on like 5/5s or something crazy. So this is a little more balanced. But the good thing is, you're freezing something, which means that the Snow Shredder is more likely to be able to attack, which is pretty good. What we did a lot of the time is you had like in Mage you had Flurry or Varden along with minion. You had Snowfall and Guardian and Shaman, and so it made it just 5 times more likely that the minions that you play that turn after freezing everything are going to be able to get through and attack the next turn, right? So Snow Shredder seems like a great card in the future. Like I said, I don't think there's enough support here right now. But I do want to be on the record by saying that Slippery Slope and Snow Shredder seem like great cards. Frostbitten Freebooter, however, is a terrible 1-star card. It's a 2/2, 3-cost 2/2. That Death Rattle freezes 3 random enemies, and any that were already frozen take 5 damage instead. So I don't want to wait around for this Death Rattle proc. I can't immediately proc this myself. My opponent can just play some 1/1s and then they get frozen. Even if I re-proc this by giving it Reborn or something, then I can't attack in the other time. It just seems very terrible. It seems garbage. Freezing on a Death Rattle is just bad. Because your opponent is just going to swing in with the things that they want to attack with, and then kill this, and then what? You accomplish nothing. So unless there's some kind of Death Rattle synergies where we can proc this, I don't really see anything. Maybe there's something there with Warlock, using Soul Freeze to freeze them and then proccing this Death Rattle. But in terms of Death Knight, I don't see anything that you can do with this. It seems terrible. And then Meltamental, 3-cost 3/8, taunt that's permanently frozen. Great stats, it's huge, but I don't really see any Death Knight that wants to do it right now. If there is a Slippery Slope deck, you might not even want to run Elemental because then you have to run Buttons, and Buttons is terrible. So it's really like this would be a nice card if it was a Death Knight card and Frost DK was good. And that's it. So yeah, it's an interesting card. It's something to consider when deck building. It's nice to help proc Snow Shredder and Slippery Slope, but for now I'm gonna give it just 2 stars in DK. And then lastly we have our filler, Natural Talent and Matching Outfits. I don't know what we're doing with them. Natural Talent is a nature spell if you really, really want a nature spell, but I don't really want a nature spell. That's terrible. And then Matching Outfits, if maybe you can figure out some kind of Giant or Chained Guardian deck, then maybe you can abuse this, but I don't really see much to do with it that has redundancy in its game plan. So I'm going to give that a 1 star as well. So a couple decks. I could have made some Control, Rainbow, Plague, Excavate, Death Knight, but I figure you guys have already seen that, so I didn't even bother. What I did make was this Frost Shaman. So, like I said, it's actually kind of interesting and exciting to consider. The Frost Rim's Fury. It seems like a great game plan with this Frost stuff, but the issue is you don't really get the chip in that you want early game. If you're not really drawing the cards. There's not really, I don't know. It's got interesting stuff. Tidepool Pupil is a really good card for Horn of Winter and Frostrim's Fury. Getting to repeat those sounds very interesting. Um, and you were running Glacier Shard, which is kind of funny. But, I think Slippery Slope is a really powerful card that in the future, if this deck gets a little more pieces, a little bit more damage that it can do, it sounds really interesting. I wanted to run Corpsicle, but we just Frost Decay doesn't really generate the corpses that the other Death Knight decks do, so we're just kind of stranded. So maybe in the future we have something there that's really interesting, but I think this is a solid kind of like blueprint for the future. And then on the right we have our kind of Corpse Burn Death Knight, which sounds really interesting. I'm running the Foam Render, uh, the Corpsicle, Horizon's Edge, Reska. So it sounds pretty fun. I have no idea. You know, there's no 1-drops, which is kind of weird. Well, other than Miracle Salesman, there might be something here. But at the same time, I also wouldn't be surprised if a 4-cost 4/3 is too slow. If Ghoul's Knight is too useless, unless you have the Eliza. If Horizon's Edge is too much mana to invest in. Um, And so I could see this flopping, but this is something that could work. It's very sticky boards with your Dreadhound Handler, your Brittlebone Buccaneer, and you do generate a heck ton of corpses that can be interesting with Stitch Giant and Acolyte of Death, right? So maybe this is something we can do. I'm excited to try it out. Foam Render and Corpsicle sound like pretty fun cards to get some inevitability with, as well as Eliza Goreblade. So hopefully this works out. But like I said, final thoughts. Um, I think Death Knight once again got kind of a mediocre rainbow Death Knight expansion that I got shoehorned into. I really I'm frustrated with the fact that like a bunch of these classes got interesting, tourist support in terms of like the synergies that they can have. And with Shaman, it just feels like there's nothing really there. I don't understand how Death Knight is supposed to use the Shaman cards to their fullest. But maybe in the future there's something there. And I do think that a lot of these cards sound very interesting for the future should the devs want to continue to deck build with them. But let me know what you guys think. I had a good time at least considering the ideas of these two Frosty K and Corpse, I guess, token DK decks. They sound pretty fun. So I hope to hear you guys' thoughts and let me know what class you guys want me to do next. As always, thank you. Appreciate it. Bye bye.